just jump right in to my screen. Here we go. So my name's Ken Gibbons. My company is U.S. Merchant Payment Solutions. I've been doing this for a good long time. I have a number of certifications from various trade groups and organizations. I have done a lot of educational classes, continuing education classes specifically for CPAs and medical clinics, universities, and a lot of other businesses and people that are in our industry. Um, I've been hired to become an expert witness a few times to talk about history and knowledge and things of that nature in a couple of trials, which is kind of exciting. And I regularly write articles, blogs, information that are published in chambers and various websites that are in our industry. So this is just to let you know I'm in the middle of it. It's not speaking from a university standpoint, but more from someone who sees it every day. PCI. So why should you care about it? What is it that discussing payment card industry details and expectations are to you? Or what does compliance look like in your business and what you do on a daily basis? And then we'll touch on EMV chip technology and some of the new things that are out as well. So here's an example of 3 breaches that could have been avoided by possibly following PCI compliance rules. Home Depot, for example, it states in this article that the data breach compromised the credit cards of 56 million customers, and it says the risks were clear to experts inside Home Depot. Hackers steal 4.2 million government records. Also, it doesn't say specifically why it was PCI related in this article, but it was in a trade journal article that I pulled that said due to a payment system not being set up correctly with the right firewalls. And to the TJ Maxx companies, Marshalls, Home Goods, etc., 45 million cards stolen from them, and it was because at the bottom there they were breaking or not adhering to 9 of the 12 security rules that this very, very large company honestly should have the funding to support. Small businesses are different, but these large companies should have enough IT professionals to keep these things away. But following PCI rules is kind of a basis for that. So it's risky business when businesses keep card information. If there is a business that is writing down card numbers and storing them in a paper format or an electronic format that is not safe and secure, as you see, there's a lot of companies doing that. That's just bad business. The backlash, well, if a company is breached and they find 100 card numbers written down or whatever, the business is required to compensate and notify the victims, the card holders who were breached. Civil damages such as lawsuits can happen. Fines from Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or American Express or the banks to the business, and additional compliance reporting guidelines. Also, the bank may decide that we don't let you take credit cards anymore. You're going to have to go back to checks and cash, and that's not a very good solution in today's world. Identity theft of that business owner's information and his employees. And probably the thing that hurts the most in the big long-term picture is damage to reputation, losing customers, trust, and income because of it. Here's a short little chart that basically does the same thing. If 5,000 cards are hacked, and you have to notify them all, and the fines and penalties and the auditing. So it can be quite an expensive issue when you are in a situation where your data at your business has been breached. Is your business secure? Well, just as we've been talking about, there's a lot of records that are constantly being hacked and breached, and we hear about ransomware and things of that nature. As it shows here, because small businesses are open to these issues more often than the larger businesses that do have the funding and the money to throw at putting up enough firewalls and the right data. Small businesses are the ones that are most easily approached. So the payment card industry was formed because of all this. Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express started what is called the PCI Security Standards Council. It's a nonprofit organization run by a board that consists of people on these companies as well as others throughout the banking and the payments industry. The council consists of organizations that play a part in any type or step of the process, including the business. So the council itself, the card brands, banks, service providers such as First Data or Global or Payment Tech that connect the machines to the bank, the merchants who touch the machines, who touch the cards, who take the information, and then of course those machines, the point of sale systems, smartphone apps, terminals, online services, etc. So PCI is kind of the umbrella that covers all the various companies that work in the industry. Their website is a great place for seeing how they coordinate security standards, the various companies that are, I guess, certified as assessment firms or hardware and software providers. They set the goals for compliance so that each business answers a self-assessment questionnaire ranging from 20 or 30 questions up to a couple of hundred questions, depending on how they take cards and the systems they're using. Network scans are typically provided by the processors. They hire an external vendor to do that, and that's just pinging the system to make sure that there's no malware in the server or in the router or in the line or the system. And then payment operations manual for employees. It must be updated annually, which is what we're doing today. So the 12 points fall under 6 different categories. The network, the cardholder data, that's where you guys come into play quite often because you're touching it and you're using it and you're going to be managing it. Maintaining a management program, that's more for management. Implement strong measures, monitor and test, which is the scanning that the processor does, and then maintaining a policy, which is what we're doing today and what we'll finish up with today. So who is affected by breaches and hacks and PCI? Well, all merchants are, but level 4 is the area that your businesses fall under, and probably 70% of businesses in the world, or in the US rather, are in the level 4 category. So businesses must ask themselves, are they up to date on their PCI compliance? Have they done the questionnaire? Are they paying non-compliance fees every month, anywhere from 25, 50, 60 bucks a month because they aren't compliant? They haven't answered the questionnaire. That makes them at risk. When was the last security scan provided? Do you get it from your processor? Are you getting it elsewhere? You need to know that. And then how did the review of your payment manual go, your operations manual go with your employees, which is where we are. So the questionnaire depends on the type of business. If you see on the left side, it says card processing, it just gives you different types of merchants. Well, some merchants have a terminal in their store. Some merchants take it online. Some have recurring billing on a computer system that's in a cloud. Some use mobile. And some companies use several of those. And so the company provides the questionnaire that fits the categories that they're working within. How can a questionnaire help the business? How can that prevent a breach? Well, thieves can be online, and they can also be in the office. Sensitive cardholder data can be stolen easily from card readers, employees who've not been properly vetted, an unsecure computer. I have a story of a nonprofit that had 650 people that gave them money every month on a regular basis, and the gentleman that did that had a machine on his desk, and he had an Excel spreadsheet in his computer, their first, last, their name, the entire card number, expiration date, 3 digits on the back, the works. This was about 6 years ago. And I said, you don't need to be doing it that way. That's a very insecure way to do this. And so we moved him to a different method where those cards aren't available to be viewed once they're entered into the system. Paper stored in a filing cabinet. Lots of doctors' offices have been audited and found that card numbers are written on a sticky note or on the file in a medical office or a business office. So, there's a lot of ways that hackers can get into the system. 5, 7 years ago, the receipts used to print out all the card numbers. So I'm glad we quit that. They're floating around on the floor in the restaurant, and they've got all the information they need. So there's a lot of ways can be hacked. And the bottom line is if you're not compliant, a business will pay monthly for being non-compliant. SAQ types, once again, another example, but as it shows, A is only 22 questions, whereas A-EP is 191 questions. And so that's required. And the good thing is these companies help you answer the questions. They don't throw it at you and say good luck. So quick steps to security. Always buy PIN entry devices and approved points of sale systems. Know who you're working with. I would always hire local IT professionals, payment service professionals, because you need to be able to get their assistance when you need it. And like it says, buying online is great for office supplies, but not necessarily for where all your money's flowing. Never store any sensitive data in computers or on paper. And make sure your routers and all your logins are password protected. Changing the strong passwords every 90 days is sometimes a requirement with some software. It's a recommendation. PIN entry devices need to be checked that none's been messed around with. That's what happened to Barnes & Noble a few years ago. Someone slid something into a PIN pad that was at a cash register, and someone out in a vehicle logged in and captured a couple 100,000 names, numbers, and cards in a matter of a couple of hours. And then confirm all online sales are not stored in your system. In other words, that your online sales are not stored on your system, but on a separate system. Very inexpensive to have pennies a day to keep that security level for your business. So the next level of conversation we'll talk about is what's new, chips or strips, the EMV. Europay, MasterCard, and Visa is EMV. That's what it stands for. And it's basically another level of security that PCI involves itself with to make sure that those embedded microprocessors and all the process of the equipment and hardware are following PCI rules. Why is it needed? Well, the U.S. is one of the latest countries. We just added it in 2015 officially. And part of the reason is that we have 27% of debit transactions, but half of the world's fraud is here. So it's going to help us quite a bit as we get more and more EMV capable at all the businesses throughout the U.S. How did it work in other countries? Well, Great Britain, losses at UK retailers fell 67% since 2004. Stolen card fraud fell by 58%. In Canada, dramatic impact on fraud, fell from 142 million to 38 million in just 4 years. So it's going to be very helpful for the U.S. and all the business owners as well. So EMV is a secure microprocessor chip so that each transaction is not identical. Everyone is different. You can't hack the chip. You can't copy the chip. You can't clone the chip, unlike a magnetic strip. So this is a much more secure way of processing because of the encryption of each transaction through that process. The card isn't supposed to really leave the customer's hand. In Europe and in Mexico and Canada, the machines are brought to the table, and that's where we're headed. In fact, a lot of the providers we work with are producing those type of machines where it's sitting on the table, like at a Chili's, for example, or brought to the table side. The chip is identified and genuine through the correct card reader. The transaction information is dynamic, meaning it's encrypting itself once it leaves, and it's kind of on the way back. And then Apple Pay and Google Wallet and other smartphone apps are secure based on PCI and EMV, and they do speed up the process because you don't have to wait for it to say remove the card. So a lot of retailers are wanting people to use those Apple Pay and Google Wallet type payment apps. So if you don't take the chip cards, the liability shift basically put it all on the business owner. Um, the bottom line was is that if someone reversed a transaction or it was a fraudulent transaction, the business owner would lose the funds, but that would be all. Now there's additional liabilities, civil liabilities, other things that the business owner will be required to pay and pony up to if he's not taking chip cards correctly. If they are taking them, then it's no liability whatsoever. The bank and the technology part of the world take on that liability. So it's very important to do that. Once again, businesses should all be doing it, and they're really forcing us to do so. 3 years after it's supposed to have been official, October 2015, basically, the banks are now reversing transactions. In other words, if I buy a piece of furniture at the furniture store and I don't have a problem with the furniture, but they don't take my chip card correctly, then the bank that issued my card can actually dispute the transaction, meaning I get to keep the money and I get to keep the furniture. Is that right? No, it isn't. But it's what the banks are doing to push businesses to get up to speed on chip technology. So bottom line is analyze what you've got. How are you taking cards? Where are you storing cards? Do you accept chip cards? If it's a keyed-in transaction or a lot of phone orders, chips don't matter. It's only for a retail situation. At this point, this second paragraph isn't that big of a deal because when it first came out, it was like people were running around selling EMV chip machines for $1,000 when they should be for $300. It was scaring businesses into overspending to upgrade their systems. Not quite so now. Becoming PCI EMV compliant, they're tied together hand in hand. So we're helping out with the PCI portion, and we're going to be helping with the EMV portion shortly. And then as a business owner, as a manager, know the systems better than your employees. Know what's going on so that you can train them properly and so you can see if mistakes are going on or if there's an issue that an employee is doing something that you don't want them to do. So I'll stop here for a moment. And are there any questions that we've covered so far? Anybody have any clarifications of anything that we've discussed?
No, Ken, this is Cliff. Sorry,
hey, Cliff.
I got on a little bit late.
Okay. We did take a roll call, and I wrote down the names of the folks, but if you want to do that again, we can do that.
Let's go ahead and let's finish. We'll do that at the end. Now, I want to make sure that everyone that's on, that you understand what we're attempting to do here. Not attempting. We want you to realize the importance of the credit card handling and processing. It has changed over the years, and in this last 18 months or so, dramatically. And we want you to take what you're hearing seriously. It is a lot of information that you don't deal with directly, but it's information that what you do and how you process the credit card is extremely important. If you have a miskeying or if it's misread and you get a rejection or a fraudulent, suspicious transactions, those start adding up and counting against you. It's important that you take entering the credit card as seriously as you do with your own bank account. And I'll be quiet and let you finish your presentation, Ken.
All right. Well, Cliff, thank you very much. And yeah, that's very, very serious business. And so, yes, we do want everyone to realize that it's information that applies to them every day. So I'm going to jump out of this and go to the other document we'll be reviewing. So this is the actual addendum or security policy for Moser Community Media. And at the bottom of this document, which we'll email to everybody, is a place for you to print it out and sign it and date it, because each person that handles card data is required to review this information annually and sign off on it. If any changes are made throughout the year, that's where we kind of come in and update that for you, and sometimes there's not many changes. So we'll go ahead and kick this off and be finished here in just a few minutes. And this is going to be a lot of reading because I'm required to do so. The payment card industry data security standards were developed to protect all the parties who accept, access, process, use, or provide software and hardware for that purpose. The requirement 12 of the PCI security standards is to develop and maintain a security policy. The purpose of the policy is to not only help a business operate in accordance with the PCI, but to also help ensure that employees and third parties that handle data do so securely. And merchants are required to have annual training with employees who handle cardholder data. So protecting stored data is the first. All sensitive data, cardholder data stored and handled by the company and its employees must be securely protected against unauthorized use. Any sensitive data that is no longer required for the company for business reasons must be securely discarded. Handling specifics. All media, such as paper, I love the term here, floppy disk, backup tape, computer hard drive, we could probably throw in there zip drive, etc., that contains cardholder information must be discarded securely by shredding, degaussing, disassembling when it's no longer needed. Cross-cut shredding, let's say that 3 times, cross-cut shredding or completely marking over with black permanent marker the information, such as the numbers, the name, expiration dates, etc. It's strictly prohibited to store the contents of the information on a MAG stripe, the 3 digits for the security, any or all digits of the primary account number, also known as the PAN, and all digits but the last 4 numbers of the credit card number must be concealed on receipt. A recommendation: choose a secure online gateway that is allowed to store your cardholder information. Always swipe the card or enter in all the card information that it asks for, and never writing it down. If it is written down, once the transaction is processed, destroy the paperwork or mark it out with a thick black marker. Protect data in transit. All sensitive cardholder data must be protected securely if it is transported physically or electronically. And those specifics: credit card details such as the PAN, the track data, etc., must never be sent over the internet via email, instant chat, or any other end-user technologies without using an encryption mechanism. The transportation of media containing sensitive data to another location must be authorized by management, logged, inventoried before leaving the premises. That's when you're, for example, if you were taking a list of card numbers somewhere, but my goodness, I can't imagine we have to do that anymore in this world with the secure ways that it can be processed. And secure courier service may be used for transportation of such media, but once again, those have to be monitored and checked and delivered at this location once upon delivery. Once again, a secure payment gateway allows for multiple users with permissions and passwords, so that transferring physical card payment data and even electronically is rarely necessary, basically because it resides in a secure location that's accessible from various geographic locations, different offices, for example. Restrict access to data. Access to sensitive cardholder data, such as the PANs, card numbers, expiration dates, etc., is restricted to employees that only have a legitimate need to view such information. No other employee should have access to this data unless they have a genuine business need and have been trained, which this manual is doing, on those aspects of payment processing. Vendors, clients, and guests should always be accompanied when in the areas where cardholder data is present, stored, or accessed. A recommendation is complete background checks on employees who handle payment and confidential data. Consult with a fraud investigator if concerned about past abuse. Physical security. Access to sensitive information in both hard and soft format must be physically restricted to prevent individuals from obtaining sensitive data unless they're authorized. Media is defined as any printed or handwritten paper, faxes, floppy disks, backup tapes, computer hard drives, zip drives, etc. So media containing this data must be handled and distributed securely by trusted individuals. Media storing sensitive data, all this data here, should be properly logged and inventoried before being destroyed. And it should be disposed of when it's no longer needed for the company. Visitors must also be escorted by a trusted employee in those types of areas where the equipment or the information is located. And all computers that store sensitive data must have a password-protected screensaver enabled to prevent unauthorized use. Recommendation: change passwords every 90 days or use a secure password encryption service to maintain PC security. Electronic door locks, keypads, or wireless key fob systems are always good methods to secure an area. Security awareness and procedures. The policies and procedures outlined below must be incorporated into the company practice to maintain a high level of awareness. The protection of sensitive data demands regular training. Review handling procedures for sensitive information and hold periodic security awareness meetings to incorporate those procedures in the daily practice. Distribute the security policy document to all employees and require that they have confirmed and they understand the content by signing the form. All employees that handle sensitive information should undergo background checks within the limits of the law before they commence their employment and accessing cardholder data. All third parties with access to credit card account numbers are contractually obligated to comply with the same standards of PCI. And company security policies must be reviewed annually and updated as needed. Recommendation: provide this type of PCI card security training annually with all employees who work with card or confidential payment information. So that's the information. Now, the agreement to comply is basically that you will sign a document, get it back to Cliff, that you agree to take all reasonable precautions to assure that the company's internal information or information has been entrusted to the company by third parties such as customers will not be disclosed to unauthorized persons. At the end of your employment or contract, you agree to return all information which you've had access to. Understand that authorized information for your own purposes, you are not able to take that with you, nor am I at liberty to provide this information to third parties without the express written consent of the manager who is the designated information owner. I have access to a copy of the information security policies, which is what you will be getting. I've read and understood these policies and understand how it impacts my job. As a condition of continued employment, I agree to abide by the policies and these requirements found in this policy. I understand that noncompliance will be cause for disciplinary action up to and including dismissal and perhaps criminal and or civil penalties. I also agree to promptly report all violations or suspected violations to the designated security officer. And there you go. Your officer will sign it after you each have signed it and sent it in, and he'll keep that on file for you guys to be able to have to review. And if Visa MasterCard ever came and asked Cliff for it, he would need to provide that to them as well. So I have finished all that I needed to discuss. Any other questions or any other comments from you folks before we wrap this up? Well, very good.
Sounds like everybody's gone to sleep, Ken.
Oh, you know how it is when you're having to listen to somebody read. It's kind of like night time. I know. Well, I appreciate you guys listening. I know that you are there. I know you're reading through it with me as well. We'll be emailing both the presentation and this document out to everybody after the call, and you'll be able to review it at any time. If I can ever help you with a question about a specific transaction that you're doing, or you have a customer that has a question, I'll be glad to visit with them as well. Just a quick phone call, no problem at all. So, Cliff, do you want to do I can tell you what I have as the roll call, or do you want to do it on your own right now?
Well, what I'd like to do is I'm going to call out the sites that are supposed to be on, and then I would like someone from that site to tell me who's on the call. Freestone, Tanya, nobody from Freestone. All right, Atlanta.
Rachel, Aaron, Cody, Ben, and Angela.
Perfect. Thank you. Marlon. Marlon. Cameron.
See Clydell and Deborah.
Thank you. San Marcos. Nobody from San Marcos? DeWitt. Tanya, is anybody there? Jacksboro? Limestone. Kelsey?
The line's getting
Center.
really staticky again.
Oh. All right. Sorry. How about Center? Tracy, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Thank you. All right. Thank you each for your time.
Did you say Jackson County?
Jackson, yes. Jacksboro.
Oh, Jackson County is here.
Yes, I got Jackson there.
And did you get Marble
Okay.
Falls also?
Marble Falls and the Burnett Bulletin, we're all here as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Again, I thank you all for being here. For those that don't know, we have, as a group from MCM, all the sites, we've had exposure this year that has cost us in this credit card transaction fraud a significant amount of money. So it's not something that is intended to scare everyone, but I mean, there's been $48,000 that MCM as a group, not one individual site, but we have had that happen. So if we